Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's SaaS from Scratch session. I'm Vani from Kalaari Capital, and I'm truly delighted to host Bhanu Chopra with us today. Bhanu is founder of RateGain, one of India's preeminent SaaS companies. And I think it's one of the earliest SaaS success stories long before vertical SaaS became a buzzword. And I think today the opportunity for us to learn from him on how to go deep into a sector and how to build for the world. I think this is what every founder dreams of. And then quintessentially, he started in a small apartment in Delhi, and from there to now building a global category leader is a journey from which we all have a lot to learn from. So, Banu, it's such a pleasure to have you with us today, and welcome and to you and everyone here. Happy Dashera, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Vani. Delighted to be here. It's always fun conversing with you. So, looking forward to our chat and happy Dussehra to everyone who's listening in today.
So, Banu, as they say, everything begins with an idea, and that's easier said than done. Most people struggle with how to land on that idea. And you chose to build in a technology company, travel tech. But at that time in travel, what everyone else was focused on is building OTAs where you are solving for the information transparency. But you focused on a different, more upstream problem. So I'm curious, not that OTS is a trap, but you built a far more valuable company. So why didn't you build? Why did you decide to build for this? And how did the genesis, the origin story, the idea come from? And what's the origin story? How did that happen?
Yeah. So, Vani, first off, the start of the journey was, I would say everything fell in place or the stars aligned that we were very fortunate that we didn't struggle earlier on. But my early years of building RateGain were not very thoughtful or very planned. It was, just trying to hustle and uh, trying to figure out a path for ourselves. So the idea of uh, RateGain occurred to me really when I was in the US. In my earlier years, I was a consultant first with Deloitte, and then I worked for another company and started my own little consulting company. But what was true in my early days was that I was traveling quite a bit, and I was always looking for deals. And the US was a much more mature market at that time. We had multiple OTAs, we had Expedia, Orbitz, Travelocity. So I was always doing price comparison, and back in the day, I felt the need for building a price comparison website. So our actual endeavor, the first endeavor of RateGain wasn't a B2B SaaS. It wasn't an OTA. It was what now are referred to as meta
Like a
search.
kayak or something like that.
That is correct. So that's how RateGain actually started. And I was in the US, and I decided to move back to India and started to build this consumer website targeted to the US consumer. And but very early on, I realized that it'd be difficult to build a consumer site setting out of India and without any institutional capital. And at that point, I didn't even know how to spell venture capitalist, right? So I had no knowledge that there is institutional capital available, etc. It was whatever savings I had in my career earlier on. That's what I put in as seed money, which was about 150 to $200,000 into the business, and that's what got us started. And so I realized that it'll be hard to build this consumer site, and we decided to pivot. At that point, Expedia had reached out to us and said, "Look, we really need this information because this is going to be our secret sauce or our competitive advantage on how we win eyeballs." And and so one thing led to another, and we started servicing them, and then we started servicing a few other OTAs, and uh, naturally we then went into this whole B2B journey, and we found other opportunities. I was speaking at an event, and one of our partners reached out to us and said, "Look, what you do for OTAs, you could be doing this for hotels as well, and we'd be very interested to white label your product and give you access to 30,000 hotels," because they had 30,000 hotels as customers. So, like I said, there was no, I learned about all these buzzwords like venture capital, TAM, SAM, SOM many years later. It was just doing the right thing at the right time and stars being aligned, which led to some very good success early on in the business.
Look, uh, uh, not knowing venture capital is a good thing, and hustling to find your customers is always the best way to start. It's your uh, business, your life, and too much of early venture capital actually can ruin things for people. So you did it actually the right way, knowingly or unknowingly, God's grace. But you, of course, said you didn't understand TAM and all of that. But now, with the vantage that you have, um, founders do struggle because they're asked these questions, or they ask themselves the question because they read too much also. How should I think? Is this a big market? Is this a small market? Of course, if you're not raising capital, and you have conviction, then maybe you don't need to ask all those questions. And people fall into two buckets. One is they feel they must have a very large TAM, total available market, and then they say, oh, my market is 20 billion or whatever, which is really useless because that is not your market, nobody's market for that matter. Or they say, I think our market is, I don't know, 5 million. But then what are you going to do, right? How are you going to ever build a valuable company? So I would love, for the sake of our audience also, to get your thought process on whether one understands the word TAM or not is not that important. How to think about a market size and decide whether time being your most valuable resource as a founder, whether you should pursue that market or not.
Yeah. So look, I mean, I didn't follow this as a playbook or a very defined framework on how we went about building RateGain. As I said to you, a lot of it was just trying to hustle our way through. But in hindsight, if I were to put this in perspective and suggest what really worked for us, is we found a niche. So this area of providing travel companies price comparison capability for them to know where they lied in the competitive landscape, it was really truly a niche. If I were to tell you now that I understand these terms much better, the TAM was significantly lower. I would say it was under 100 million, right? Just providing this information. But we found a unique niche use case, and it didn't have much competition as a result. We hardly competed with maybe three or four companies globally. And as we sort of expanded into different verticals, we had different competitors in different segments, but the competitive intensity was not as much, which allowed us to build the product, flourish the product, etc. And now when I think about how we build the company brick by brick, we got into the segment through one use case. We found adjacencies that we could serve, as we learned more about the industry. And fast forward to today, Vani, we now are an integrated tech stack that allows our customers to acquire guests, retain and engage them, and have a wallet share expansion. Or, in other words, the capability set has gone from being very niche to being completely an integrated tech stack, which is a front office software all around the consumer traveler that we help our customers serve in terms of both acquisition, retention, and engagement, as well as wallet share expansion. And now I feel we have a very, very incredible playbook because we work with the top 3,200 enterprise brands in travel and hospitality. So we work with, the top 25 OTAs out of the top 30: Expedia, Booking, Agoda, Make My Trip, C Trip, Rakuten, all the top 400 hotel chains, Continental, Hilton, IG, Marriott, Oyo India, Taj, Royal Orchid. So pretty much every major hotel chain, OTA, car rental company, Avis Budget, Europcar, Sixth, every major entity in the travel ecosystem is our customer. And our playbook is very simple now. How can we continue to build more capabilities to enable them to service their customer better?
Mm,
And that playbook now has made our TAM significantly higher. If I look at
mm,
the overall travel tech spend, it's about 90 billion. Okay.
mm,
We currently service what is in software parlance called the front office software, and our
mm,
TAM for that alone is about 7 to 8 billion. But as we
mm,
progress on building out our more capabilities and get into mid office and back office software, our
mm,
TAM has the ability to go up to about 90
mm,
billion. So net, if I had to summarize, I think in today's world, there are multiple use cases, niche use
mm,
cases that may not seem very interesting at first in terms of an overall
mm,
TAM, but that's
mm,
your entry into a set of customers. And then
mm,
you slowly build on getting into adjacencies and being vertically
mm,
integrated to expand on the opportunity and the TAM
mm,
that you have
mm.
in the market.
Yeah, so I know that land and expand is a cliche term unless it's actually executed on the ground like you did, right? And there are a couple of questions from the audience around TAM from Shubham asking, how do you make sure that TAM is real and not an illusion, as well as from a investor perspective, how do you make sure a founder is truly building a defensible category? But I think every investor is very, very different. But for us, if a founder came and said, look, they had a very viable use case that they had a right to win, and we thought that the founder was somebody who had the leadership capabilities to execute today, but also expand the vision to build something larger tomorrow, whether he or she knew what that larger is not, I think we would still make a bet on that founder. So I think you did the classic of, let's get customers, let's get revenue, and let it be very defensible, and from there we'll expand, right? I have a question on domain itself. So there are two schools of thought, that people with a deep domain can maybe find the problems and problem solve. So you want to invest into Banu because he is a travel expert, has, I don't know, been CMO, CSO, whatever it is, at Orbits, let's say, I don't know, or something else. Or It is the general capability of a founder to truly build a business, and maybe the domain is not so deep that they can quickly learn, right? And at least from Banu, what I know of your background, you weren't like a deep, I've done my, a decade stint in travel. You may have been a consumer of travel like all of us are. So, for founders, from your expertise, and I mean, sorry, from your experience and today's vantage, right? How to balance this domain knowledge, uh, uh, domain expertise, variable in founding a company?
Yeah, so Vani, you're absolutely right. I didn't come from this background at all. My background was largely tech, and I was trying to figure out solutions for travel industry without having had any background experience in the industry. And we learned about things fairly quickly using both primary and secondary research, and I was reading a lot and being at events, etc. But my general sense for the audience would be that I think this whole concept of domain expertise, I think it's overrated, right? And frankly, I mean, I can speak to travel and hospitality. I also feel that uh, people just get used to doing things in a certain way. So it is quite important to get fresh perspective and employ some of the cutting edge uh, innovations that you are perhaps utilizing in other industries. So, just to put the things in perspective, there is an HBR article quadrant that they built on what are industries that are extremely progressive and what are industries that are not as progressive in terms of adopting innovation and unfortunately our industry doesn't fall it actually falls in the bottom quadrant. So uh, earlier on in our hiring process, I would be very, very keen to find people who are hoteliers and
Mm,
who have deep domain expertise. But
mm,
now, if you talk to my HR head, they will tell you I'm always looking for people outside of our industry, people who don't have the
mm,
baggage, who bring
mm,
fresh perspective, who have an AI first mindset.
mm,
And what is amazing also in because we need to talk about today and not how things were when I started the business. We are in an age of extreme intelligence in terms of being able to gather information, right?
mm,
Today, I think in terms of understanding the domain, there are multiple abilities to get that information. I mean, just use chat gpt and you'll know everything you need to know about, for
yes.
instance, travel and hospitality industry. I mean, of course there are some local nuances on barriers and um, challenges that you might have as you try to like sell your product in the industry and the integrations that you need.
Mm,
But my sense is that it should not be prohibitive for you to go enter our industry or any other industry just
mm,
because you don't have that domain expertise. I think it can be easily acquired in today's
mm,
day and age, and thank God you don't carry that baggage that
mm.
people like me would carry. Because now I
Well,
consider myself
now
like
you're steeped into this. Yes. But you're bringing other people that question your opinion or strategy from outside in perspective. That's a leadership trait we'll talk
yeah.
about later. But there is a question from Smita in the audience. Many SaaS founders fall into the trap of selling features. How do you think about proving real ROI to enterprise customers? And you talked about, I think you mentioned Expedia came to you, and then later at an event when you spoke, some hospitality guys came to you. So, this this feature versus ROI trap, if you will. Uh, did you naturally have a way to avoid it, or was that over time, intentional improvement? Uh, how did that transition of somebody who's technologist to a business seller, transition for you, and what lessons, insights from there for other founders?
Yeah. So Vani, actually there is a video out there in the internet. I did a keynote at one of the SaaS events from 10 years ago, and it's still relevant today, which where I talked about uh, you you don't need to focus so much on features, you need to focus on outcomes. So customers are not looking for products and features, they're looking for solutions to their problems. And this is very much true, especially in our context, because we've traditionally been very, very enterprise focused. And solutions are, whether it's either largely two buckets. Can you help me increase revenue? Or can you help me become more efficient and help me reduce costs? So ultimately, your products need to speak to that. I also strongly believe that you don't, I mean, we learned this the hard way. Our products used to have all the features possible. But we learned the hard way that really, if you think about all the tools that you use as well, there usually like one or two features that you would hone in on, or which you use 80 or 90% of the time. And I think that principle really applies to all products, right? And you really need to hone in and get that very accurate and right. The other thing that I would say is, in terms of building capabilities or products, I think what's very important is to focus on the NFRs, the non-functional features, right? Where you are ensuring that the product is very intuitive, simple to use, is very fast, loads, you know, uh, in no
Quickly.
time. Yeah. So those are some of the capabilities you need to consider as you are building your SaaS capabilities. I think what I am finding also from a go-to-market perspective has become quite appealing, and we are pivoting our business to go in that direction, is how you go to market commercially, right? So
Mm,
going back to what I was saying, that you need to drive outcomes for your customers. Actually, what I'm finding is people are extremely driven towards commercial models that are outcome driven. So, for instance, just to give you an example, um, we we do digital marketing, right? So our
mm,
capabilities, our Martech offering, simply put, is digital marketing for a hotel, and then we power the hotel's website. We enable them to take bookings, etc. So our traditional model would have been, it's a subscription fee. You pay us like $100 a month or $500 a month, depending on what capability and features you are using. Now the commercial model has changed. What we are going and
mm,
saying to the hotel is, look, let us own the entire guest acquisition journey on your behalf.
mm,
Meaning, we will go out and market on social media, on search,
mm,
on TikTok. We will power your hotel's website, and we will actually land you the guests. So when we
mm,
land you the guests, pay us a percentage of every booking that you get, right? So
mm,
very similar to what the OTAs do for the hotels. So now
mm,
we've actually gone and pivoted a commercial model, and
mm,
I can't tell you how well it resonates with the
mm,
customer, because now they are paying for performance, they're paying for
mm,
an outcome. They're
mm,
not having to calculate, to your earlier point on, hey, what's going to be my
mm,
ROI, etc. It's so easy to calculate that, because we are saying to the
mm,
hotel, look, for every booking that you get, I mean, depending on what all we do for them, we're telling them we will take 10 to 15% of the booking amount.
mm,
And frankly, it's hard to do that for every product that we have, but we're working extremely hard to drive to that outcome based pricing. I
mm,
think that A delivers uh, a bunch of confidence in the minds of the prospect as well.
mm,
That you're putting your money where your mouth is,
mm.
and and two, like I said, it's easier for them to justify internally on the ROI that your solution can drive.
Mm. So, related to that, first, though this is not your commercial model today, enterprise sales is hard and revenue buildup takes time, let alone depending on whether you're doing enterprise mid-market or, SMB, the DSO cycles could be uh, uh, large. So those don't necessarily act in favor of a founder who's trying to bootstrap. Obviously, they want venture funding, but unless you have all of these well thought through, there's a question of can you really, maybe your product feature benefit, all that is clear, but and even maybe the GTM is clear, but can sales execution and quality of revenue really be good? That question is something a founder is going to get grilled on. And sometimes, even if they're able to articulate the benefit from a customer perspective, they may not be able to articulate from an investor perspective this quality of revenue question. Now, they're going to hear you and say, oh, I got the answer. I'm going to move to pay for performance, right? But the problem is, early in a business cycle, this can be suicidal because you don't know your ability to command a premium for performance and your ability, unless you have, deep
Yeah.
understanding or whatever. So that could become sort of a trap where, and often because uh, founders are good at undercutting themselves in order to gain a sale, often, and won't hold forth on, no, I need to get the premium. So pay for performance early in a company's life cycle could truly backfire. So how to think about pricing and GTM, right? Both are kind of interrelated because your sales uh, people you hire, your sales cycle will differ depending on whether you're doing pay for performance like you're doing, which is a highly consultative sale. If you're doing a hardcore enterprise sale, it's going to differ. So how to think about this?
Yeah. So, Mani, I would say that I mean, I understand the challenges of going in with pay for performance early on. It would require you to really ensure that the product works, right? And it works really, really well for you to be able to command and have the patience to subscribe to such a model. Um, but I do think that it can enable much faster scale up as we are witnessing as
Hmm,
we pivoted to this model for some of the new capabilities and products that we are launching. So, we launched like an AI agent to take bookings on behalf of the hotel. So when you call the hotel, earlier we were charging like a subscription fee, and basis the number of minutes you spend, we charge you that. But again, it's very difficult, especially in our industry, for people to understand and determine what is the ROI you get. And as soon as we again switched it to saying, look, we'll charge you basis the number of bookings that you get,
hmm,
it really changed the story for us.
hmm,
But to go back to your question about if you still wanted to go down the route of um, subscription based pricing, how do you think about that? How do you, and you're absolutely right, it's absolutely linked with your go to market strategy as well. So if you are in enterprise sales, The ticket size absolutely needs to be six figures and plus for you to be able to justify feet on street. Um, Also, I will also nuance it by saying that what I've also found is uh, the even in the enterprise uh, go to market, your strategy can be different depending on the savviness of the segment that you're going after. So, for instance, we go after multiple segments in our business, and what we have found that the OTAs are extremely progressive because they're really tech companies, and even though they're large enterprises, we find that you could get away with like a product led motion where you give them the product, even in an enterprise scenario. So if your audience is progressive, if you're selling to an IT person, you could theoretically lead with a product led motion as well, which we have done as well. So, but going back to your question about feet on street, solutions engineer, pre-sales engineer would warrant that the ticket size is much larger. For an SMB segment, I would argue that you have to be able to support the product either through a marketing led or a product led motion, uh, complemented by an SDR inside sales model. So because the ticket size is smaller, for it to be cost effective and make the unit economics work, that model needs to work. So there needs to be not just a product market fit, there needs to be a channel market fit, meaning what channel can you use to implement your go to market. Money, I can't hear you.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, now I can.
Okay. So, how much ever technology works, it doesn't work sometimes. So, sorry about that. Um, you know, another constant topic that comes up, especially if you're a founder in India and building for SaaS, is should I uh, do quick proof points in India and then gain some market here and go global? Should I go global from day one? This becomes actually an other cross the chasm type of a classic problem that founders struggle with. So, one question on this local versus global, your thoughts on choice of market, right? India, US, Europe, Southeast Asia, whatever may be, and how to think about that, uh, both from the context of when you started, but also today is a very different time than when you started. So if you had to redo today, how would you think about local versus global from the choices founders need to make from market focus?
Yeah. I mean, just a quick word on when I started. I mean, going back to what I was saying, nothing was planned and thought through. And, I'm much wiser now than I was at that time. It was just, you know, uh, doing what basis whatever your gut instinct was. And so we went international day one. We focused a lot on the US market, and that's how we started. And for the longest time, we were focused in North America. Even now, I want to say less than 5% of our revenue is India. And we are now, although focusing a lot on building out our strength here in India and expanding because the opportunity in India is quite massive. Uh, but if I were to redo it again, would I do it any differently today? Possibly not. I think we would still approach the same way that we have been approaching. Uh, I think the few parameters that you need to consider in how you make that decision whether you go local or global is really dependent on the audience that you're trying to serve. Like I said, there is I'm trivializing this a little bit, but your audience is either tech averse or very tech friendly and is very comfortable in buying technology, for instance, over the phone or over the internet. Um, and and the second parameter I would say is the need for localizing or how much customization you need to do on your product to make the product local. The higher the need to customize to adopt to the local nuances, the more complex and challenging that becomes. And the third parameter that comes to mind is really around, and this was the most driving factor in why we always chose going global, and even now is just uh, the ticket size and the unit price. Both are extremely favorable in a US market versus India. So what I would get paid, from a hotel in the US versus what I get paid here, although that's changing now, is is dramatically different. And given the fact that we didn't have to customize so much because it's a US market versus India, it made all the sense to go. And in our case, also the fact that I had a history of being in the US. So I mean,
mm,
I pretty much studied, grew up there. So that kind of helped us understand. And I early on in my career had the experience of selling to Fortune 500 companies as a
mm,
consultant at Deloitte. So
mm,
that really helped me understand also how to go after enterprise customers, etc. So
mm,
that really helped. So I think it's a difficult question on whether
mm,
to be local or global, but
mm,
I think these are some variables that you need to consider around pricing,
mm,
around ability, the need to how nuanced your product needs to be
mm,
based on that local geography, and then who's ultimately the buyer, right?
mm,
Is the buyer, is it possible to sell the buyer using like a product or a content led motion, is
mm.
another factor to consider. I mean, there
I want
you
to.
will see examples of many SaaS companies now out of India that are focusing on just the global audience and doing extremely well, uh, because of the audience that they're trying to sell to.
I think some parameters you mentioned that you had familiarity of the market does make a difference because the trial and error and the cost of discovery that a founder has to go through can be either a steep learning curve or can be intuitive. But changing gears for a minute, we early on you mentioned in passing AI first a couple of times, and I want to really get into that topic because today there isn't a single founder who doesn't say AI, and a lot of it is really bolt on and not really truly thought through. And sometimes it is if they are truly building something from ground up. So, and we all would agree that AI is going to change uh, each of our lives personally, but our businesses also radically. So, how should uh, a founder, both from their product especially perspective, think about AI as core to their business? How have you had to transform your business to make AI core to your solutions? How are your customers thinking about it? And from that, would you advise young founders that are just starting out?
Yeah. Okay, so Vani, we are looking at AI and approaching it in a couple of ways. One is we're approaching it to get a lot of efficiency gains internally. And then I will talk about externally how we think about uh, utilizing AI and building out our products and our approach there. So internally, uh, I will tell you we are doing a few things. So one, obviously everybody at RateGain needs to be a vibe coder so that they can drive efficiency in everything that they do and make things go much faster. The second thing that we are doing internally, which is quite amazing, is the ability to experiment has gone up several folds, right? So you think of something, ability to mock it up, even like build like a prototype. The prototyping has become much significantly faster than it ever was in this AI world. The third thing that we are doing is driving a lot of automation. I mean, like even in our HR team has built on their own without using the dev team, built uh, applicant tracking tools, uh, built AI capabilities on how we screen candidates, etc. So that culture of automation using AI across all functions is pretty evident, and we take a lot of pride in that. Now, let me talk about how do we use AI when we go to market. So, Vani, we strongly believe that ultimately in rate gain context, who do we sell to? We sell to a revenue manager, we sell to a marketing manager, we sell to a distribution manager. So a lot of these people that we sell to, we believe could ultimately become autonomous agents. So our ultimate vision is to create these autonomous agents that will help the business do the revenue management, do the digital marketing, do the distribution. But our first step is to build out capabilities which are semi autonomous. So we act like a co pilot to a revenue manager, to a marketing manager. I mean, the closest analogy that I can draw is like with the self driving cars, right? So first we had like the co pilot, when you're driving, like Tesla offers it, and now you're moving towards completely autonomous. So our intent is to go in that direction as well, where, for instance, in our revenue management capabilities, we are giving them a lot of actionable insights, where they just need to approve the insight to action on. But ultimately, we want to make it completely automated and autonomous, where the autonomous revenue manager, AI agent, is actually making decisions on how you price for the hotel. That will take some time for us to be able to build that comfort uh, within the audience that we sell to. But ultimately, that's the direction that we are taking.
So I want to fast forward and talk about your IPO. Okay. You did all the right things, founding, hustling, build and expand, build your team, and now think of the future. But in between, you went public, if I recall correctly, in 2021, quite early from that Indian public market for tech private companies of, rate gain category. But my question is, IPO versus selling a business in an M&A, continuing to be a founder led CEO chairman versus bringing new leadership into the company, and knowing even essentially what is right for you. I say this because, of course, we are all human and we have a vanity. Why would I not want to be a public company CEO and all that? But number of reasons why not to be a public company CEO. And I had built two software companies in US, but thankfully, in hindsight now, after decades, I'm grateful that I always knew I did not want to be a public company CEO, and I won't go into why, but I was very clear why I didn't want to be a public company CEO. And hence, when there was an opportunity, rather than take public, I sold my business. Everybody made money, and I didn't see that as a cop out, which sometimes founders go into a complex personal complex about. So how did you come to this decision you want to go public, and then just how should founders think about it? What lessons, insights would you offer?
Yeah, I think a lot of decisions, key decisions like this, are basis the circumstances that you're in,
Mm,
and uh, everyone's situation is different, and so I'll talk about what was the thinking when we went and did the IPO, and what is the thinking, especially to the point that you made about it's a founder-led company, and yes, it is, and even I still have a lot of passion, even 20 years later, of having run the company. Uh, so I think what is extremely important uh, as an entrepreneur is to get timing right,
mm,
right? I think a lot in an entrepreneur's journey is about getting the timing right. So, for instance, there have been, and you're very much aware of this, Vani. You probably love it now, but there've been cycles when the founders could demand anything and they would get it, right? So that's the best time to go raise money from a founder's perspective. And similarly, similar kind of situation occurred in the IPO market in 2021. There was a travel company by the name of Ease My Trip. We were in
mm,
the midst of COVID, and I mean, COVID just happened, and they went
mm,
public, and it had a
mm,
grand reception.
mm,
So I was like, how does this happen,
mm,
right? And it's the point that I want to drive, that it was just about timing. I mean, the
mm,
IPO timing was quite perfect in that sense, because it was the hottest time to IPO, just like it is now.
mm,
If you have a,
mm,
I mean, if any of your audience is a sizable or a IPO company, I would
mm,
highly recommend them to go for an IPO versus go after private markets. So,
mm,
in summary, I'm saying it was more of a timing thing than anything else. We got
mm,
much better multiples, valuations, um, and also, I don't know, people make a big deal out of being a public market company. I find it much easier than being a
mm,
private company, because
mm,
you may not like this, Vani, but in a private scenario, you have to give all these rights to investors, right? In a
mm,
public
mm,
market scenario, everybody is on the same level playing field, right? Everybody is
mm,
a common investor.
mm,
Um, so I think that was the key reason. Now, to
mm,
answer your question on being still founder led, look, I didn't come into launching RateGain when I started out with very large ambitions that will
mm,
disrupt the world of travel and hospitality. We, I was just trying to make enough money. My benchmark was that I should make enough money that I was making in the US, right? Whatever I made in the US is what I wanted to make. And that was really the threshold that I was trying to achieve. But over the years, uh, we built great credibility. We have now, as I was saying earlier, all the top brands and travel ecosystem as our customer. So it makes all the sense to continue to drive on this mission of trying to become the world's biggest travel and hospitality tech company. So that's what excites me. I think foundationally we are in the strongest place that we've ever been, and there's a lot of honey. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
It on my end, Banu, that yeah, I can hear you. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So
Yes. Can you
I
hear
was,
me?
yeah, I can. I was addressing the second part of your question about still being founder led and how that is. And I was. Can you hear me? Mani, can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, I can.
Yeah. So I was just
You.
saying on
Banu, we
this.
can totally hear you.
Okay.
Yes.
I was
Yes.
saying on this part of your question about being founder led company, and the point is that it's taken us a long time to get to where we are, where we have such a platform of all the top enterprise players in the travel ecosystem as a customer, and we have won their credibility. So really we want to continue to participate in helping them unlock this revenue with the customers that they try to sell to. And I see with the opportunities that AI is creating, that there is a huge opportunity ahead of us. And I truly believe that we can, over the next 10 years, be the biggest in travel and hospitality tech. So, that's a very exciting, audacious mission that we have for the company. And that gets me excited, and my management team very excited to get up in the morning and come to work and make things happen.
No, I think it's great. I think you have a storybook uh, case study for building a company. And since we are running out of time and we could have so many more topics to talk about, I just want to get to the personal side of you, Banu, and I'm hoping you can hear me. And I'm sorry uh, if
Okay.
I think you can hear me. So thank you everyone for bearing with the on-off situation here. But so I just kind of want to get to personal side of you a little bit, because when you are where you are today, uh, uh, things can look easy in hindsight. So, what do you treasure the most? Your IPO day, the bell ringing, or when you achieved your, let's say, first 1 million ARR? So, kind of the early stage of the company or the IPO, what do you treasure the most?
So the answer might actually surprise you. Obviously, those were. I think I'll talk about milestones that that were very dear to us. I think the first
Hmm.
milestone was, uh, I I think after third year of being on operation, we won Deloitte's Fast 50, and we were actually number one on that list. So we were the fastest
Wow.
growing tech company in India in that year. So that was
Wow.
quite delightful. The second thing that was obviously very delightful is the IPO and ringing the bell. But what I treasure the most, and which is what the entrepreneur should do also, is I treasure the failures that we've had.
Hmm.
Uh, there was an event back in 2011 where we had a channel partner which was responsible for 75% of our revenue.
Mm.
and they basically went out and bought our competition. And
Mm.
so overnight, we lost that 75% of our overall revenue. But that
Wow.
made us, reassemble, built out our own GTM. And
Mm.
I still remember to the day I went out to Amity University, which is
Neighborhood, yeah.
your neighborhood, and we hired a bunch of freshers, and I would do daily stand-ups with them, and
Mm.
we launched an SDR and an inside sales motion uh,
Mm.
to recover, and we did so well
Mm.
that we actually recovered that revenue and grew on top of that within a year.
Wow.
So, and that was money, the beginning of having from having very very modest and small aspirations to
Mm.
having very large
Mm.
audacious ambitions
Mm.
for the company, because ability to bounce back
Mm.
from that scenario and then COVID and do an IPO,
Mm.
uh, it gives that's why it makes the company quite resilient, and
Mm.
has given everybody in the team a lot of
Mm.
confidence in our ability to go big.
Mm.
So I actually treasure more the failures, because that those were the makings of the character of the organization.
Yeah, I think, treasure the failure. I'm gonna continue to double click on that for myself. And I agree, because you create a muscle memory when you overcome, that plays out in so many aspects of your life. But it's a very important, it's a great insight, whether you're a founder, not a founder, for anything in life, regardless of your age and where you are in life cycle. I think it's a very good point. Treasure your failures. You're changed because of them forever, for the better, hopefully. But last question. So we, close this on a more maybe lighter note. Um, what would you do? What's the one thing you would like to do you haven't done yet, and non-business? What would that be?
I mean, I've been fairly blessed that despite the busy schedule that we have as founders and running companies, that I've been able to pursue personal aspirations, as well as also be able to spend time with friends and family. So I would say just continue to do more adventure trips. I like
Mm,
going scuba diving and skiing. So continue to have more of those.
mm. So you're like, is there a spot you haven't scuba dived yet?
Um, no, I'm very fond of the Maldives and Andaman and the Red Sea. So I like to continue to go back to those places. And for skiing,
Mm,
yeah, there's the Dolomites that I'd really like to go,
of
where I
course.
haven't been.
Italy. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but I have been to most of the places, resorts in Switzerland.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
continue to do more of that also. And my
Yeah.
favorite
I-
is Zermatt. So I
mm.
do imagine that at some point I'll be spending several weeks a year there.
I think on that note, we always talk about work. We always talk about success from a gets measured largely from an external perspective by the material outcomes that one has achieved. But I think truly achieving that without the balance of other aspects of life really, leaves you sometimes a little bit lonely. You can achieve everything, but if you don't have a balanced life, it really
Yeah,
doesn't carry as much meaning. So finding uh, 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 that you live a full life, whatever that may mean to different people. Somebody it's scuba diving, somebody it could be something else, but living a full life that's important, and you've done that as a example that it's possible to do it. So I've truly enjoyed this conversation, Banu, and I'm taking away more things than I anticipated I would. And I'm sure this pay forward of you giving time to founders is also valuable for them. And I see that from the comments. So I'm really grateful and appreciate the time you gave us today, and to the audience also. Thank you for joining us. If you have any further questions for Banu, you can post it even after this event, and we'll see if we can get some answers. So thank you so much, Banu, and you have a great weekend coming up ahead.
Same
Holidays,
to
actually, coming up ahead. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right. Take care. Thank you, everyone.